Okay, let's see. Sorry, y'all. It's always trippy how to present this and figure out. Oh, I know the presentation's too small right now, so just give me a second. Mhm. Okay, so welcome to this farmer advocacy training. Um, this training we did back already like a month ago, so I'm gonna try to not be repetitive if folks have already attended this training, but also a lot of things have changed since a month ago, right? Like we're moving more towards actions now, and we're clear now in what NICFA's um, is focusing their energy on, and also we have more clarity as people who would like to help y'all get involved in advocacy work on where we can move. Um, so we already did some introductions, so we can kind of skip this. It's bios, but you guys are welcome to come back and read a little bit more about this another time if you would like to. Reggie's going to go ahead and talk a little bit about policy, and then after him, I will talk a little bit more about how to actually get involved, direct actions, and moving forward.
Yeah, as Vanya said, I'm going to talk a little bit about policy, a little bit about how a bill is made, some of the NICFA's current standings on bills, the importance of why you should be doing policy, and yeah, just generally like a one-on-one, just try to touch on to everything and hopefully get you interested to become a policy nerd like me. Next slide. So first, before it starts, when talking about policy, I like to give a little grounding of what it looks like. So there's a short session and a long session. Every even year is a short session. Every odd year is a long session. This year is a long session. And a good way to remember what happens is like long sessions are usually when like important bills come out, and short sessions when they double back and like, oh, this work, and they do editing. So like if you have if you have a big thing coming up, if you have a big idea, it's usually preferred to do it in a long session so people could talk about it and then give it a year to edit in short session. But that's what it looks like in Connecticut when just the base of what it looks like. So every even year, short session for editing, every odd year, long session for actually creating policy and pushing it through. Next slide. And this is a general overview of how a bill becomes a law, at least in Connecticut. Again, it's very general because I've done a few bills and this timeline, it says one, two, three, four, but in real time, this could be a month, this could be 2 months, this could be 2 weeks. There's no real rhyme or reason. But first, someone proposes a bill, be it a senator or a representative, and then it goes to a committee. So the committees are like housing, human services, education. Effectively, what bucket the conversation falls into is what committee it falls into, what committee it goes to. And then it goes to the Legislative Commission office just to get a number behind it and see if like if it yeah, to see if it's like A, legal, if it doesn't step on other laws, land, feet, um, figure out some more turn it from an idea to actually something that's attainable. So it moves from just like a high level theory to like here's how you do it and here's what will pay for it or here's this that will connect to that. So it usually goes through so after it hits committee, it does that and then the committee it goes back to committee once some numbers are plugged into it and more realistic terms and definitions are put into it and the vote happens. If it's voted yes, it goes to the interhouse, so like your reps and they also vote on it. And depending on how that goes, if it's a positive, it is goes up to the governor. If it's a negative, sometimes it's pushed back. Depending on how strong it is, it's just pushed back for some more editing and conversations, or it could just die. That's something you just have to keep very wary of, keep on top of. But yeah, when it goes to the governor's office, there's a few things that could happen. The only bad thing that could happen is if he vetoes it. If he just ignores it, or if he signs it, he signed it, it's passed. If he ignores it, and 5 days during the session or 15 after it adjourns, it passes also. So it's not always that bad to be ignored. So like that's how it happens. But again, like as someone who has a bill going on right now, like last week I did a conference on on what is it? On Thursday, step two happened, and on one Thursday, step two happened, and then the next Wednesday, step four happened. So this could happen like it could take months. Again, it could take And from step one to step two, it took like step one to step two took like a month. Step two, yeah, this all the process could take any amount of time. Like there's no rhyme or reason. All you could do is just hopefully keep up with it. But that's also a difficulty in when you're doing a law is just actually keeping up with it, seeing what's going on, seeing what changes happen because there's something called amendments where they edit it to make it either take stuff in, take stuff out. That's why you always have to watch what's going on with your bill. Find your next session, next slide. And I talked about again, you always have to be on top of your bill. But this is what looking on top of your bill looks like. A bill doesn't pass by one person's voice. It is a community effort. If one person says it's a good, for example, this year there's 7,000 bills that came out. So there's probably 6,000 great ideas that one person wrote that no one's heard of that's dying. It's a community thing. So you have to mobilize your group, make coalitions, build like-minded people, do surveys, everything like that, and keep everyone educated so they know what's going on, how it's moving, what steps to take, who to reach out to. Um, and while you're doing that, you also have to engage your legislators. Something I notice a lot is people think once you're a legislator, they know everything. Legislators, if they had a job at McDonald's before, the day before, they have McDonald's the day before. If they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. Legislation's another job. So like sometimes it's your job to be the bridge between the community, education, and the legislator while so you're educating the legislator what the information is while you're also educating your community what the legislation is saying. So if they're like, this part of the bill really scares me, you talk to your community about like, hey, this part of the bill really scares them. And it's the job of you and the community to be like, hey, it might scare you, but we really need it for this reason. And just get 500 people to say what this reason is. So you're constantly a bridge between those 2 points, the community and those legislators. You're always in the middle. Testifying at public hearings. The public hearings are really hard to keep on top of. Like I mentioned, last week I was at a conference and within 5 days there was a one of my bills got edited and everything and then got a public hearing and I took like a few days off and I missed it. So like it happens real fast like that. Like it could happen and if you miss one email, your bill could happen and public hearing could pass. But that doesn't mean just because you missed a public hearing doesn't mean your voice is silenced. That just means like when they specifically asked for a public hearing, it was missed, but you still could reach out to your representatives, your representatives, your senators, your representatives and senators and everyone who is supposed to be looking out for you. Um, Again, just because you missed to testify at the public hearing doesn't mean you could stop. At all points, you should be talking to your legislator. When the bill's written, 2 weeks after it's written, a month after it's written, after it's passed, after it's always a conversation. Um, and number four, building a coalition. Like I said, bills don't really pass in silos. Maybe one does here and there, but the power comes from the community. If they don't think there's going to be a big impact, um, the legislators won't sign on. I like to say when there's not money, there's many. So use as many people as you can. Unless you're a billionaire, you use as many people as you can. And the currency you have is community. So use that. They're the best opinions. They're the best educators. You might hear a story that you might see an angle you never even thought of. So conversation is a big part. This whole slide is effectively saying talk to everyone all at once. Um, so what happens after legislation passes? um, you still have to look at it. You still have to watch it. Like I said, every odd year, the bill passes. Every even year, it gets edited. Those edits could strip the soul out of your bill. So it's your job to keep on watching it, make sure that everything you're saying is happening, make sure that's implemented. Because sometimes bills just even when they pass, they die. Like if there's no one to do anything, or an election year happens and the persons who are leading it are out, there's no one to pick up the ball and take it. That happens. That's a very regular thing. So you have to monitor implementation, participate in rulemaking. So when a law passes, there's usually stuff attached to it. So it's like, here's what I want, and here's how this want is going to happen. So to participate in that wanting, participate in every part of it, every part of that bill, from the big ask to how the ask is done. Just because, again, it's very easy for someone to put a line in, and that one line could take away 30% of people you're protecting, or trying to get uplifted out of it. So you have to be very mindful and read every line, which is kind of strenuous because it is also written in ye olde English. I know that's always a big barrier. It's not written to modern standards. Some we were just talking about our last meeting. Some systems are working perfect, unless unfortunately those perfect systems are just horrible systems, and that's kind of what's going on there. So it's like, yeah, it's a barrier to read it. But again, you have community, so break it apart. Maybe you take a paragraph here, someone else takes a paragraph there, and you meet up on your bi-weekly or monthly meeting to talk about it. But again, when a bill passes, just because it passes doesn't mean you want anything. You have to kind of stay on top of it, push it, make sure everything you're talking about is going through. If you have money, you have to stay on top of bonding and appropriations and make sure that they use that money. Because just as easy as you get money, it can be clawed back and put into a bucket, and they'll be like, yeah, this money was never used, so we're using it for something else. So again, a win isn't a win until you see until it happens, you just keep on pushing. And even when it does happen, you still keep on pushing because one even year an edit could happen that strips everything. Um, Support the implementing agencies. It's usually it's always connected to something. If you have an education bill, it goes to Department of Education. If it's a housing bill, it goes to housing. If it's a food thing, it goes to DOAG, Department of Agriculture. So monitor those people, talk to them, yeah, stay in contact with them and just keep telling them like, here are the stories, here's the impact, both positive and negative, and just keep working with them. And again, educate the public. Everything you're getting from, let's say a rulemaker, like there's an edit year and the Department of Agriculture is like, yeah, this part's real expensive. We're not sure if there's an impact. Tell your community that, and the community will be able to tell you better than one person. Be like, yeah, there's an impact. Sorry, I couldn't do it. I have a job. Sorry, I couldn't tell you about it every day, but here's the impact. So you are again the bridge of information. That's kind of the job as when you're doing a bill. Next slide. So mentioned all that, but I didn't mention how you talk to your legislator. Well, I didn't until now. Here's a website. It's cga.ct.gov/ yada yada yada. But an easier way is just go to Google and put find your legislator CT, and this is what it looks like. You put your town, your street name, and the number, and press find. It'll tell you everything from your local reps up to your senator, and it just breaks it down. It's very easy. And if you click on it, it'll go to the website where you'll find the phone number, their mailing address, their email. So if you want to talk, you want to call, you want to email, this is the best site to do it. And also, when you go to their pages, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, we have a coffee shop visit here on a Wednesday at 7 a.m. Keeping up on their websites are the best place to get information. But yeah, this is how you actually find them. Find your legislator. Um, yeah, that's what the page is called. Um, so NICFRA's policy priorities first is foundationally based on racial justice. But what does that mean? Well, one, improving the economic viability for farmers, every farmer, making farmland more accessible, improving agriculture infrastructure in Connecticut, confronting climate change and building climate resilience, and increasing access to affordable health care for farmers. So what does that look like this year? Well, it looks like right now these are two policies that we are pushing for. Go to the next slide. It's one bill is the OPAV or what is it called? Option to purchase restricted agricultural lands at agricultural value or OPAV. Um, Effectively what it's saying is that you pay for land at the agricultural value. So like if there's a quarter acre a corner around the corner from you and it's worth 100,000, but if someone was going to build a house it's 900,000, you'd go for that worth that's 100,000 instead of what it's expected to be or what's it for the development value is. It's a real agricultural value of what the land is. And this is to help protect land for farmers just because a lot of land goes for development prices. I live in Bridgeport where a quarter acre is 135,000 just because of there's a chance that someone could put something there, but in real terms it's like 35,000. So this is to create more avenues for farmers to protect land. And on the left-hand side is an act concerning enhancement to local food for schools initiative program and the CT Grown for CT Kids grant program. So it does a few things. One is switching it from Department of Agriculture to Department of Education, since they're ones who actually work with schools. And it also including child care service providers in addition to school boards and elder participants in the program. So it expands it to not just children, but everyone in the whole sphere of the education system um, in the program, and it provides additional support and funding for both local food for schools inside the program and CT Grown for CT Kids, which is some of you are farmers, so you might know, but it's like it helps pay for local foods to get into schools, so local farmers into schools, um, or local farmers' crops into local schools. There's a chunk of money, or there was a chunk of money for people to um purchase that, and it helped bolster the helped each other. Schools got healthy food, farmers got to sell foods locally. Next slide. So on a federal level, what NICFA's been doing is being like a big force in fighting for the Farm Bill. Um the Farm Bill, well, it's New Connecticut Farmers Alliance, but it also covers a lot of stuff. One thing that it covers a majority chunk, as you can see, it's like 76. It's a 76, but it's actually like 76.2, a little bit more. But either way, it covers stuff like these 12 things you see. But it also covers, well, let me first. The Farm Bill is a legislative package passed in U.S. every 5 to 6 years, affecting food security, conservation, rural communities, and the agriculture community. So every 5 years, it's voted on. The last one was done in 2018, and it was extended in 2023. Then it was extended December 2025, like last minute. It was, I think, December 21st before Congress was possibly going to be shut down. And this last extension is only until the end of the year. Uh, it might even be till like September, October. I forget the specific dates, but this is everything that the bill covers. Um, the next slide talks a little bit more about some of the bigger programs. One being SNAP, covers about 37 or 375,000 residents, and it offers benefits to low-income families throughout the state. And the programs I mentioned before, like the CT Grown, stuff like that, you could use SNAP matching on that. Equip, which is help people purchase equipment. Um, it helped sorry. Equip is a USDA initiative providing financial and technical assistance to farmers and ranchers for implementing conservation practices on active agricultural lands. So it was a pretty decent chunk of money to help expand your farming. And the FSA is they help out with like what is it, like farm purchasing loans. It probably says it here. Farm purchasing loans, conservation efforts, disaster recovery. Um, so FSA was the body that it also fell under the Farm Bill or falls under the Farm Bill. Next slide. So why does it matter? Well, the Farm Bill is one of the most impactful pieces of legislation for food and agriculture policy. On the right-hand side, this little picture is something I like to refer to. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It touches on everything. It's a safety net, creates jobs, it's good for health and nutrition, it's good for conservation. It does all that. It's called the Farm Bill, but it does so much more. Every issue is intersectional, and this is a one bill that kind of proves it. So every dollar match usually slips into every other part of the field. Next slide. So my last slide, now that I'm seeing text kind of small, but I'll just let me chat a little bit. Um, so why do we organize around policy? Well, here's some stuff that happened in the last month and a half, and this is just to say that everything is political. I know like we try not to say that, but everything is political. So yeah, some things that happened were funding's freezing because you can't use the term DEI or environmental justice. Just this morning, I was reading about how Common Ground, the high school in New Haven, lost $500,000 to their what is this program called? It's like a work development or a work study program. So 71 kids just lost their job because it was a considered DEI and environmental justice program. That's one and two right there. Immediate expansion of the American timber production, which is like so 280 million acres. Effectively, it's like three Californias in size of trees that are about to get cut down. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about, climate change, all that work we're doing, it could be wiped out with this one bill. Like all the trees we planted, all the work we're doing, all the fights we're doing to combat climate change. There's about three Californias worth of trees about to be knocked down just because a combination of this and that's because of tariffs that we're trying to make enemies out of friends and sorry, I don't want to talk too much. Yeah, yeah. So that's a that's a thing. So and the cancellation of the LFPA, which is the what is it called? Local Food Purchasing Assistance Program. Um it was kind of what I mentioned before, like the CT, it's effectively the same thing like the CT grown for CT kids, how it helped places buy local foods, farmers markets specifically, farmers markets and other places like that. So it's not canceled for this year, but at the end of this year in 27 and 20 or 26 and 27, it is canceled about 20, $2.8 million dollars of it. And so yeah, from school programs and jobs to trees, climate change to things like farmers markets, it affects you. And if it doesn't, a lot of people in nature just have friends with jobs in there. And one thing that was created in the last couple months is Doge, which has fired scores of people, frozen scores of programs. On the right-hand side, this is I got this from an article that's like 2 weeks old, which is about like 1% of USD NRCS grant funding was released in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So 99% of it's just frozen. So that's the world we live in because what's going on in policy and politics. So again, everything is political. Like I said, every if you eat, it's political. If you drink water, it's political. If you breathe, it's political. If you have kids going to school, it's political. If you're homeschooling, it's political. So this is why we organize around policy because every point, if you like it or not, is being born is political. Like that's like depending on what side of the street you live, you like being born is political. So we organize just because we like to protect lives. With that, I'm gonna pass it off to Vanya.
Thanks, Reggie. This is a really good segue into what I'm going to start talking about. Um, as we can see, just even from this slide alone, so much has happened in the last couple of months. I know we all feel it. I know we all know it. And I also want to point out how many places and spaces folks are getting attacked from. It's this alone is in agriculture, right? This is what we're looking at here, how farmers are being attacked, but also in other spaces, folks are similarly facing similar things. And so today, as I talk about advocacy and moving to action, I want folks to know that we really need everybody to show up. Like we need folks to step up to do their part, and everybody showing up and doing work is critical for the wins that we need. I mean, even in this alone, like seeing LFPA be cut, that is very close to home to me because there are farmers here locally who are being funded by this program who I know have been able to support and donate to local food box and food share programs that won't be able to do that next year if that doesn't change. I know with like Solid Ground, that program is similar to the program that I even work in, and that is, feels very close to home. Um, but I hope these examples move us towards action, and it is scary and the fear is real, but I don't want it to have it freeze us. So, like Reggie said, uh, numbers are power, people power is our currency. We're not rich here, right? We don't have the funds to do all this work, but we got the people. And I strongly believe that our numbers can totally change the way things are going forward. So, I have this slide originally from like a couple months ago. Why advocate? Honestly, at this point, I don't think I need to talk about it more, explain that further. If you don't have it yet, um, I do have some guiding questions to help you figure that out, but also some grounding questions to help you think a little bit closer about that. I do think it's important for folks to continuously check in and ground themselves on why they're doing the work because it's not easy. It is easy to burn yourself out, to feel defeated, to let fear take over. And so to continue to ground ourselves on how it's affecting us closely, I think helps us build up our resilience, but also remember why we're fighting this fight. And also think about who else is in this fight with us, right? To make the work feel less lonely because it's not. And there's neighbors who are ready to step up, just like we're ready to step up for our neighbors. So if it's impacting your community, it's impacting you. The well-being of your community directly benefits the well-being of yourself as well. So to keep that in mind is really important as we're doing this work. And also figure out where it is that we want to move the needle. There's a lot of different folks moving the needle in different spaces, and defining where we want to move the needle is an important move so we know where to show up, where to really target our energy to. And I think that's really helpful. I think it can be easy to be overwhelmed and be like, well, what do I do out of all these things? Because there is so much to do. But when we ground ourselves and choose where we want to move the needle on, it'll be easier. So I have some examples of advocacy work. These are few and there are many just the way I like to phrase it or frame it is the way they're attacking folks on all different ends, there's the same way that we can advocate on all different ends. There is hundreds of sources and places that we can move forward in. Um, joining a coalition is one easy one. There's already folks doing this work and laying down the groundwork and who have been doing this work, tagging along with them and moving forward on what they've already identified, like NICFA has, is an easy way to move forward. So, for example, they've already identified some bills, and we can press on our representatives and, hold them accountable to try to move those things forward. Another one is peer advocacy. So, like I said, the well-being of our community is our own well-being. So, figuring out where we can align with other folks, especially here in farming, as we're talking about food in schools, there's other folks in the food justice section who also really care about these bills, and it also affects them. It affects the programs they're running. It affects the work they're doing, tagging along with those peers and what they're doing as well and checking in with them like, hey, how can I support or how can I leverage what I have here to move us forward? That is also really important. And then lastly, social media. I think we all have our phones now, and posting, sharing our stories online is really powerful. I think often we're all scrolling. It could be easy to end up being in a doom scroll, but I think it's also just as easy to start sharing our stories online. The way that the media will try to flood our screens is the same way we should try to be flooding other screens. We want to be also sharing our narratives of the story, especially because things are censored and there are algorithms that will try to stop us from sharing important information. However, I also want to encourage folks to step away from their phone. If um, trying to like post online is going to make it so you're stuck on your screen, I encourage you to move out of that habit and go have a conversation in person. I keep telling folks that we really need to move towards grassroots work, so having conversations one-on-one in person and continuing to do that work um, that, we used to do before we had all these tools online. So, I mean, we're like really in-person actions. And this work is vulnerable. It's like not easy to show up to new spaces, to meet new people, to tell them why these things are important to us, because these are real fears or also things that are affecting our day-to-day lives, but it's necessary. So I want to invite folks to show up as themselves, but also know that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to show up and be like, hey, how can I support? I don't really know, or maybe I still have to do some education to like best show up, and that's totally fine. Like honestly, at this point, we just need folks to show up in any capacity, in any way, wherever you are at. That's how we're going to be changing things, and that's how real change is going to happen. So here are some strategies that I have for folks to start moving forward. These are things that you can easily do. First one is start having more one-on-one conversations. This means when you go to any event, any space or other thing, start having some real conversations. I'm hearing folks like some feedback from other events or other things I've gone to, folks telling me like, I want to be tapped in, or I want to know how to get to actions. I want to know like what I need to do. And I'm not sure. And it's easy to be overwhelmed with social media, email lists, serves. It's easier to hear from someone one-on-one to be like, come to this thing with me, or go do this, or like, here's an action. But we don't put ourselves in that position unless we actually start talking to people one-on-one to do that work. Um, it's also a lot of sharing where you stand on things. I think most of us have peers and community members that know where we stand on things, but I think sometimes we actually leave a lot of things unsaid. And especially when it comes to building up allyship and building up people who support us and can move along with us to the work, I think it's really important for us to really start like naming things the way we truly feel about them. Second one is have an ask prepared. If you're already doing some work or you already have something like that you've pinpointed in your own kind of circle, and you need other folks to tag along with you or to support you or hold you accountable in doing the work, um, practice asking other folks for those things. Practice asking other folks like, well, what can I do? Or practice asking folks like, I have this thing that I want to do and I need some support. Can you come with me? Get comfortable with that. The third one is join a coalition or start your own. There's a lot of things that have already started, but I'm honestly not the type to be against more things started because the more we have, the more people power we have. And often, I think, especially in rural areas or groups, it can feel isolating. So if you already have like a good set of folks that you feel solid with to start moving towards action with, go ahead and do it. And the last strategy is follow folks who are mostly or most directly affected by certain policies, like follow their lead, check in with them, how the work is moving, and how you can best support. And honestly, like part of this experience is going to be a lot of folks stepping into the work humbly, but also a lot of folks being ready to forgive each other. We're going to step on each other's toes. People are going to argue. It's a hard time, y'all, but I'm gonna need everybody to have humility and I'm gonna need folks to also be ready to forgive to move the work forward. One of the biggest things and strategies that these systems are counting on is for us to be fighting each other instead of them. And we need to move away from that. That's also one of the other things of what I strongly feel about on social media. Don't argue with people online. Go argue with someone in real life. I'd rather y'all do that because that will create more action and would create a different change for people. But yeah, that's a big one in this work. All right. This is another slide. If you really are like, maybe I want to start something from zero. Maybe I don't want to join a coalition. Maybe my area is a little bit more rural or there's not much that I know is going on. Here's a roadmap that I have. I will share a handout that I also have with a lot of these questions and how to follow through with them. But this is also essentially like, let's say you're like, I really want to educate myself a little bit more on an issue because I want to support folks or I want to support people. These are some basic things that you can start. And at this point, most of these things you can search for online. I'm going to be like really serious. Like a lot of these tools and things are online or somebody has already done this work. So that's the really awesome part of having all this technology nowadays, that a lot of these things exist. All right, so I did do this QR code, but I feel like there's a small enough group here that I don't need folks to fill it out online. If everybody's okay, if you can just drop in the chat. I want to know right now, what are folks willing to do? Like out of these actions or other actions that I've mentioned or that you've heard of, I kind of want to get a sense of these sort of things that people want to engage with. Mainly so I can also think about how to support y'all on how to engage with those things. So like the first one is showing up to a protest.